Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. My name is John Mason and I'm the Chair of Martin Aircraft Company Limited. And I'd like to welcome you to Martin Aircraft's first AGM as a listed ASX company. I'd now like to introduce the board to you. Managing Director Peter Coker, Steve Bayliss down the end, John Diddams, Jenny Morell, Dr Zhang, and our Company Secretary James West. Our auditors are here from PricewaterhouseCoopers, Robert Harris and Jacob Phone. And we have apologies from Dr Liu, Dr Luan and Glenn Martin. As we have more than 3 shareholders having the right to vote at the meeting at present in person or by representative, accordingly a quorum has been achieved and I declare the meeting open. Link Market Services, our share registry, would have registered your name at the shareholder registration desk at reception and provided you with a shareholder voting form. Please ensure that you have registered and have a shareholder voting form. If you have not registered or don't have a shareholder voting form, please see Link Market Services at the shareholders registration desk at the front now. And I imagine you will all have complied, otherwise you wouldn't have got in. Minutes from last year's AGM held on 30th September 2014 and the extraordinary special meeting held on the 12th of February 2015 are available for review. A hard copy of the minutes are available at the entrance to the meeting. The annual report and notice of meeting are also available at the entrance. So the agenda today, at this annual general meeting, shareholders will be asked to vote on 7 items of ordinary business and 1 item of special business. The resolutions are primarily around appointment of directors, the auditors, and a recommended change to the Constitution as documented in the notice of meeting. Prior to the commencement of voting, the Managing Director Peter Coker will provide shareholders with a presentation of the annual report and the company update. Prior to the completion of the meeting, the floor will be open to shareholders who wish to ask any questions. And on completion of the meeting, refreshments will be provided and shareholders will have the opportunity to meet and discuss any matters they may have with the directors and management. The outcome of the voting will be announced to the ASX as soon as Link Market Services complete the vote counting and PwC as auditors complete the scrutineering process. I now ask Peter Coker, the Managing Director, to make his presentation.
Good afternoon. This has been a really very special year for Martin Aircraft Company. The successful listing following a round of pre-IPO capital raising, along with a commitment from our cornerstone investor Guangxi Science, has paved the way for the company to move forward to providing a commercial jetpack in the latter half of 2016. Our focus has always been the development and commercialisation of the Martin jetpack and associated products. And now with our financial backing, we can really make progress on that journey. During the year, a number of directors moved on as we positioned the governance structure of the company to support the next phase of growth. From a management perspective, we would like to thank those directors who provided support and guidance during their time leading up to their departure. Such guidance is always highly valued. In particular, we would like to acknowledge the tremendous dedication, enthusiasm and drive that Glenn Martin provided to the company before his resignation in June. The company is very clear that without Glenn, we would not be here today. His vision for a jetpack that he then dedicated his life to deliver was a great example of his tenacity over many years. His recent award as Most Inspiring New Zealander at the New Zealand Innovators Awards is a true testament to an individual who has that endearing Kiwi entrepreneurial spirit. We also welcome our new directors from Quanxi Science, who bring with them a wealth of innovation, technical and business skills, particularly in the environment of disruptive innovation. On the financial side, at the balance date, the company had net assets of 25.8 million New Zealand dollars, with cash and bank deposits of New Zealand dollars 23.6 million. As mentioned, the first part of the year consists of an active pre-IPO capital raising, targeted mainly within Australia, and which raised approximately 6 million New Zealand dollars, and therefore allowed us to commence the next stage of growth. 4.8 million New Zealand dollars of research and development investment took place, and this year 2.9 million development expenditure has been capitalised as an intangible asset to reflect the development phase. Our total loss for the year ending 30th of June 2015 was 5.2 million. Following the successful pre-IPO capital raising, the company concentrating on setting itself up for a listing on the ASX. 27 million Australian dollars was raised at the listing, consisting of 21 million Australian from our cornerstone investor Quanxi Science Limited and $6 million from the general public and existing shareholders. The offer was oversubscribed and closed on the 13th of February 2015, with 67,500,000 shares being allotted. In addition, 1,515,000 ordinary shares were allotted in relation to Extra Capital, who were our lead advisors for the listing as payment for success fee. All the convertible preference shares previously in existence converted to fully paid ordinary shares on the date of offer closure. The company now only has one class of shares. The company also agreed, as part of the investment agreement, to issue Quanxi Science a convertible note with a face value of 23,020,000 Australian dollars, which provides further liquidity. No dividends or bonus issues were declared during the period. Our organisation grew considerably last year, and with it has come a number of restructures to align the company with our growth strategy. At the end of the financial year, we had a workforce of 43, which has grown to 53 as of today. A number of technical milestones have been achieved during this year. It should be noted that as we move through the technical milestones, we are actively engaged with the New Zealand Civil Aviation Authority. Our first major milestone, major technical progress, is that of the ballistic parachute. We sought a requirement for a parachute opening in such a way to successfully support a major technical failure at 12 metres as a maximum height. Working with our innovative parachute providers, the results are showing that the chute can support the jetpack with a failure from around 6 metres. And even below that, the drag caused by the innovative opening system slows the equivalent mass of jetpack to within a survivable envelope. Our next stage is to test this on the pre-production aircraft next year and start to integrate the opening detection system within the new flight control system. We have continued to develop the originally designed 2-litre 2-stroke 4-cylinder engine into an improved version referred to as the Mark 1X. Our aim has been to create greater reliability and sustainability for testing and marketing events. As we always recognised, this engine would not be suitable for a production engine, and when we commenced work on a Mark II engine. However, it became clear early that this path was not a sound one for a commercial product. So after the listing, we initiated an engine program through an innovative engine company from the United Kingdom that utilises the latest in engine technology. This program is going well, and the first of the pre-production engines are due to arrive in the first part of next year, in time to be tested both on the unmanned test vehicle and our first pre-production commercial jetpack. Recognising that the power plant is one of our most important elements of the aircraft, we also commissioned a study into other options, including both a 2-stroke and a 4-stroke 6-cylinder concept. That study is going through independent peer review at the moment, and a decision on whether to take one or both to a design stage will be decided in the coming months. Our philosophy is that over time we will potentially have a range of engines available for customer choice depending upon their requirements. Our next technical progress has been with our flight control system. At the heart of our aircraft performance, the flight control system is an integral element. The system used on the P-12 family of aircraft, and before that on P-11, is now obsolete. And with the limitations of its being a US controlled piece of equipment, we have moved towards an off-the-shelf capability that has been adapted for the jetpack. We have almost completed the unmanned test vehicle, which has been specifically designed to act as the airborne test platform for this project, which will later be converted into the medium and heavy lift unmanned air vehicle. The system has growth potential beyond our first product, and we will introduce the first software drop in the coming months. We already have a test suite that allows us to test the integrated system prior to any fitting to the aircraft. As a global company working in the aviation business, we have started the identification and qualification of our future supply chain. In the past, we have used the Kiwi approach of adapting off-the-shelf and often motor vehicle-related items for our use. As we move towards a commercial product, we need to ensure we have part traceability and approval. We firstly qualify our suppliers. This has resulted in some of our previous suppliers not meeting the requisite standards for our future product, and to de-risk the potential, making it necessary for us to spread the net wider. Our supplier base will be constantly monitored, and to de-risk the potential of parts not being available, we are identifying a minimum of 2 qualified suppliers for as many parts as possible. In addition, we are introducing an aircraft maintenance system software package, rollout and training of which commences for the team on Monday next week. Our production processes are well advanced, with the facility gearing up for an eventual capacity of 500 jetpacks per annum being assembled within our Christchurch factory here. We will shortly have 2 members of the Guangxi Martin Jetpack joint venture team join us to learn about our process, as it is our intention to roll out similar processes, including quality systems, to each place that we set up an assembly plant in the future. In discussing quality, our safety management system has been launched. The SMS, as it's known, is a future requirement of the New Zealand Civil Aviation Authority, so we have introduced this now, as it also covers the new requirements laid out in the Health and Safety Reform Bill that becomes effective on the 4th of April 2016. Our new Business Excellence Manager leads the business process development in this area, along with many other business processes which are being rolled out. In order to assure we have a greater customer set in the future, the company is focusing on developing processes to achieve Part 146, aircraft design organizations, and Part 148, aircraft manufacturing organizations, throughout 2016. Interestingly, this allows us to work with the New Zealand Civil Aviation Authority to develop a design certification for a jetpack, something that does not exist at the moment, as presently our closest fit is within the microlight class aircraft. Marketing activity has started to ramp up since the listing. We successfully participated with static aircraft and simulators in both Paris and the Czech Republic. We're about to participate in AirTech 2015 in Germany and at the Dubai Air Show in a couple of weeks. We also intend to have a China flight demonstration in the near future. We are investigating the opportunity to participate in the Singapore Air Show and a show in the USA early next year. Each of these shows generates substantial interest, which allows us to commence more formal discussions with potential customers who, until the show, were unaware of our capability. From a China market perspective, the Guangxi Martin Jetpack joint venture has been registered in Hong Kong, and our first member of the team is involved educating the China market on the capabilities of the jetpack and establishing the regulatory pathway. An additional 2 members of the team will be seconded to Martin Aircraft Company for 6 to 9 months to learn our assembly setup process, as I mentioned earlier. So on our commercialization path, our sales and marketing is progressing very well. In addition, we have moved letters of intent to memorandums of understanding in a number of areas, and we are in discussions now to move these forwards to a contract. Other letters of intent are in draft with potential customers prior to signing. We have also signed 2 formal alliancing agreements with companies in Czech Republic and India. And both these alliances are completing their respective business plan in consultation with us for the coming calendar year. All these agreements have been worked to the next step of orders and subsequently sales. From a corporate head office perspective, we still remain lean in the back office. The key appointments during the financial year have been the Vice President of Sales and Marketing and the Director of Flight Operations. We have also recently appointed a Business Excellence Manager. The former Research and Development team has been restructured into a design team to align with the requirements of certification in the future. Our production team is growing, with assembly engineers now taking the lead in assembling the prototype P12s, and early next year, the pre-production commercial jetpacks. Finally, the flight operations team is responsible for the P12 family of aircraft, along with the soon-to-be-completed unmanned test vehicle for both testing and marketing purposes. On the manufacturing side, the design team is on the path to the final design and is currently checking off specific areas that need to be included in our first commercial product as part of our certification roadmap. As mentioned earlier, we are progressing the supplier qualification, and the assembly team has taken over the role of building each of the jetpacks that we are now designing and producing, be it the P12 family, the pre-production commercial jetpacks, or even the static aircraft for marketing. So in summary, Martin Aircraft has had an excellent year in terms of progress. Now funded to allow us to travel the path of commercialization, we have hired and continue to hire the right people. We are making major technical progress, and we are on track for delivering commercial jetpacks in the second half of 2016. I'm very happy to take any questions from the floor at this stage. Thank you. I'll hand back to our Chairman. Sorry, did you have one question?
Yeah. How many jetpacks have you got built?
So we have
Prototypes.
P12-3 and P12-4. P12-3 is the one you see over there. P12-4 is this one here with all the parts ready to go. So we'll have 2 flying jetpacks, and under there, under that black screen, is actually our unmanned test vehicle. And so we'll have 3 flying aircraft, hopefully all the time. P12-2, which was our first one that I think you saw, Ruben, has been decommissioned, and we're using the parts back into the unmanned test vehicle.
What happened to the white one? Has that been
That's the one we decommissioned.
okay.
Yeah. So,
do you envisage the RNZAF possibly having a requirement?
when we look at the various customer set, we think that actually the requirement in the New Zealand is much more in line with the Department of Internal Affairs and natural disaster recovery. That's the sort of area we're targeting. I can't see the NZF necessarily having a requirement right now, but in their role of certainly support to the natural disaster recovery scene, then certainly there would be a use of the aircraft in those particular roles. As to who would own them, I wouldn't be able to give an indication.
What about the military, the RNZAF?
Yes, so generally the RNZAF, if they are supporting a role that is in natural disaster recovery, then certainly the jetpack would be of use, but I not necessarily see the RNZAF owning those jetpacks. They may come from somewhere else.
Now to the formal business. Voting will be by way of a poll. That is a count of the votes cast, not on a show of hands. Link Market Services will undertake the vote counting process, and PricewaterhouseCoopers will act as scrutineers. A result will be declared and made available to shareholders and the ASX on receipt of the scrutineer's certificate. The explanatory notes to support the resolutions are included in the notice of meeting as circulated to you on the 13th of October 2015. If you do not have the notice of meeting with you, a copy is available at the entrance. 154 proxies representing 169.4 million shares have been received. All proxies received except 34 have directed the proxy holder to vote in favour of the resolutions. The 34 non-directed proxies representing 57.9 million votes allow the proxy holders to vote as they wish. The total number of shares on issue is 245,694,108. Business items 2 to 7 are ordinary resolutions which require approval by a simple majority, that is, greater than 50% of the votes of those shareholders entitled to vote and voting on the resolution. Item 2 is my re-election, and I will stand down and ask John Diddams to take this.
Yeah, this is the re-election of John Mason. John was appointed as chairman of the company on April 1st, 2014, and is offering himself for re-election by ordinary resolution in accordance with retirement and rotation requirements of clauses 20.3 and 20.5 of the Constitution. I put the resolution to re-elect John Mason. Is there any discussion, firstly? Okay, I now ask shareholders to vote on the resolution by completing their shareholder voting paper, which you now do. And I don't think we put hands in the air anymore, do we? So I thank you, and I guess we let them know at the end of the meeting whether he was in fact re-elected or not. But in the meantime, I'll hand back on, hopefully he will be.
Thank you, John. I know it seems slightly disconnected when you're voting and you don't know what the results are, but there we are. That's what happens with a poll vote. The third item, I should say, is the re-election of Steve Bayliss. Steve was appointed as a director of the company on the 28th of November 2012, and he too is offering himself for re-election by ordinary resolution in accordance with the retirement and rotation requirements of clause 20.3 and 20.5 of the Constitution. So I'd put the resolution to re-elect Steve Bayliss. Is there any discussion on that? If not, I'd now ask shareholders to vote on that resolution by completing their shareholder voting paper. Since the last annual meeting of the company, Dr. Liu Raopeng, Dr. Zhang Yang and Dr. Luan Lin have been appointed as additional directors to fill casual vacancies by the board in accordance with the investment agreement entered into by the company with Guangxi Science Limited dated 19 December 2014 and clause 20.4 of the Constitution. Dr. Liu, Dr. Zhang and Dr. Luan are now required to resign at the annual meeting in accordance with clause 20.4 of the Constitution and have offered themselves for immediate re-election by ordinary resolution. Item 4 then is that Dr. Liu Raopeng be reappointed by ordinary resolution as a director of the company in accordance with clauses 20.3 and 20.4 of the Constitution. I put the resolution to re-elect Dr. Liu Raopeng. Is there any discussion? If not, I now ask shareholders to vote on the resolution by completing their shareholding voting paper. Item 5 is the re-election of Dr. Luan Lin. That Dr. Luan Lin be appointed by ordinary resolution, reappointed by ordinary resolution as a director of the company in accordance with the clause 20.3 and 20.4 of the Constitution. So I'd now put that resolution to re-elect Dr. Luan Lin. Is there any discussion? I'd now ask shareholders to vote on the resolution by completing their shareholding voting paper. Item 6, the re-election of Dr. Zhang Yang. That Dr. Zhang Yang be reappointed by ordinary resolution as a director of the company in accordance with clauses 20.3 and 20.4 of the Constitution. So I put the resolution to re-elect Dr. Zhang Yang. Is there any discussion? Not. I now ask shareholders to vote on that resolution by completing their shareholder voting paper. Item 7, the appointment and remuneration of auditors. Guangxi Science Limited accounts for the company as its subsidiary. Guangxi Science Limited's auditor is Deloitte. If the company does not align with Deloitte as the auditor of the wider Guangxi Science Limited group of companies, the company will have both PwC and Deloitte effectively undertaking interim and full-year audit work. This would involve the company having to dedicate more resources to the audit process and incurring unnecessary costs. Accordingly, PricewaterhouseCoopers have resigned as auditor with effect on conclusion of this meeting to allow for the appointment of Deloitte as auditors. The company thanks PwC for its work as an auditor of the company. I now put the resolution that Deloitte are appointed as auditors of the company and the board be authorised to fix the fees and expenses of the auditor for the ensuing year. Is there any discussion? If not, I'd now ask shareholders to vote on the resolution by completing their shareholder voting paper. Business item 8 is a special resolution which requires approval by not less than 75% of the holders of those shareholders entitled to vote and voting on the resolution. This relates to Directors New Zealand's residency criteria. Since the last annual meeting, the company has received significant investment from sources all over the world and has expanded its global network. The board considers that the company should not be bound by the relatively onerous director residency requirements currently contained in Clause 20.1 of the Constitution, given the company's status as a company with global investors and aspirations. Clause 20.1 of the Constitution currently provides the number of directors must not at any time be less than 3 or more than 8, plus the managing director, if any, appointed in accordance with Clause 22. At least 2 directors must be ordinarily resident in New Zealand. In addition, the number of directors who are ordinarily resident in New Zealand must be at least 1 greater than the number of directors who are ordinarily resident in a country other than New Zealand. The proposed amendment to the Constitution would remove the last 2 sentences of Clause 20.1 of the Constitution. The proposed amendment would afford the board more flexibility in sourcing director talent globally. The board considers that the company needs to have the freedom to secure the best directors available worldwide to continue to foster the company's growth. The board notes that the company is bound by provisions of the New Zealand Companies Act 1993 requiring that it have at least 1 director who lives in New Zealand or in an enforcement country, and being a director of a company except as the equivalent of an overseas company that is registered in that enforcement country. Currently, only the Commonwealth of Australia is prescribed as an enforcement country under the Companies Act 1993, Regulations 1994. I would now put the resolution that Clause 20.1 of the Constitution be deleted and replaced with the following. The number of directors must not at any time be less than 3 or more than 8, plus a managing director, if any, appointed in accordance with Clause 22. Is there any discussion? Any questions?
If we don't have any directors from here, we're listed on the ASX, not New Zealand. Majority of major shareholders in China and many of the directors from China. Will there be any more meetings in New Zealand? You used the word onerous if we had to have New Zealand directors. Will it be onerous to have the annual meetings in New Zealand?
So, Martin Aircraft Limited, despite it being listed on the ASX as a New Zealand registered company, and there is no intention for it to cease being a New Zealand registered company, its AGMs therefore will be held in New Zealand, and under the New Zealand Companies Act there will be a requirement for a New Zealand director on that board. This is not designed to get rid of New Zealand directors. It is designed to be a less onerous clause in the Constitution to give us more freedom in selection of directors. Hope that answers your question. Good. Any other questions? If not, I'd now ask shareholders to vote on the resolution by completing their shareholding voting paper. I'd now like to throw the floor open to any questions you may wish to direct to me, and if they're of a technical nature, I'll deflect them to my left, to the Managing Director. Any questions at all?
Public man flight, when's the plan for that?
Public man flight? Without wishing to be evasive, let me say that the flight testing procedures that are currently being undertaken are very encouraging. Flight tests thus far have been unmanned. We'd like to think that we will meet our prospectus requirements, which is to see a manned flight before the end of 2015.
This year?
That's the end of this year, before the end of this year, yeah. You comfortable with that answer?
Yes,
Please, about that.
I understand there's been a lot of testing happening,
yeah,
but it's just not in the general public.
That's correct. Until such time as we're comfortable that the testing procedures have been fulfilled, then the Managing Director will bring a proposition to the Board to allow for a manned flight. And once that happens, then we'd like to think that our shareholders and the ASX will be made aware of it.
The shareholders get invited to watch?
Beg your pardon?
The shareholders be notified so they can come and view the flight?
Do you want to answer that?
Yes, I mean, certainly our intention is to be able to invite shareholders. We have a very, very strict test schedules that we undertake right now. As you have read in the reports that we've released, the challenges have been around the reliability of the Mark I engine, which we are addressing through various areas, but we need to ensure that the test schedule is followed before we actually allow manned flight to occur. Once we do that, there will be a period of what we just do manned flight test flying, at which point, when we are comfortable with that, then we will be looking to undertake a public manned flight, where certainly we will be indicating to shareholders the planned date or time, but of course that is always weather dependent, as you know, so there'll be a risk for those of you that if they wanted to fly across, then we make sure we do the best we can. The one thing we do not have control over is the weather.
But we're working on that. Yes, sir.
Do you think there's always going to be just a single person reconnaissance type vehicle, or do you see it having a passengers or a cargo? Or
that's a good question. So just expand your mind and think about an unmanned vehicle being sent to take someone from a high building or somewhere where they were in danger. The unmanned vehicle will then carry that passenger. Similarly, imagine a fleet of unmanned vehicles being led by a piloted vehicle and operating convoy, mule train they'd call it. So there's no limit to the potential of this, depending on how it's developed and whether it's operating in an unmanned or manned capacity. An unmanned vehicle will have a far greater payload than any current drone, so I mean the future is quite bright, and the use of a Martin jetpack in an unmanned mode, the opportunities are limitless. Do you want to add to that?
No, that's very good.
Do you envisage a two-person machine at any stage?
That's not currently on the drawing board, but never say never. Never say never. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
When is the F-Watch demonstration likely to happen?
So at present we have got a memorandum of understanding with AvWatch over in the United States. AvWatch is a company that provides capabilities to the security agencies in the United States. Our intention right now is we're focusing on areas where we believe that we can get a rapid closure around contracts, and we're working those right now, which is why my VP Sales and Marketing isn't here. But I will have to say that we are limited in our numbers of people right now. AvWatch have been very, very open, and they will be our first port of call within the United States and we'll be using them as the stepping stone and the demonstration side for all of the government agencies in the United States. So we are starting to work with them. We're working through some terms and conditions, but we're actually operating some other terms and conditions with other countries as well at the moment. So hopefully, I would suggest that you ask me that question when I see you again in Sydney in about a month's time, and we can have that same discussion.
Ruben.
Just the new flight control system, moved from the old one to the new one. Is the new one actually operating now, or is it still being?
So the new one is off the shelf. It's been operating many, many hours. It's got a lot of airborne time, and it's actually been used operationally in other areas. So what we're doing is we're adapting it to the Martin aircraft, both in an unmanned version and of course the manned version as well, because it is actually used mainly in the unmanned environments. So we actually have that particular bit of kit here right now, and it's on the test rig, or part of it's on the test rig, which you see over in that little hut over there.
So it's not on the jetpack operating?
Not yet, no. We're using the old systems in 12.3 and 12.4. We're using the old SAS systems that we've had on 12.1 and 12.2. But we will retrofit once the UTV, the unmanned test vehicle, has proven the capability of that particular new flight control system.
And is it a significant improvement on the old system?
How do I compare it? It's a bit like having a big mobile phone like this and the ones you carry around with you these days.
Sir.
For the manned flights, what sort of licensing are you going to be? A helicopter pilot, aeroplane pilot, or something special? Is that going to be a big stepping stone with civil aviation to get a special license to drive it?
That's a great technical question which Peter's going to answer.
So the aircraft is actually a microlight, class 2 right now. So anybody with a microlight license can come along. They can actually then undertake a course, which is an approved sports aircraft course that we've been allowed to train people ourselves. We've been given the allocation to actually train people. We aren't actually targeting the general public right now. We're actually targeting, obviously, the first responder. So, but when we actually do that, even the first responder pilots will be able to be trained by us. And as you know, in some of the countries, first responders, if it's a government agency, they don't necessarily have to have licenses. They can decide what they want to do themselves. But we will train them, and we will be able to train anybody in the jetpack environment ourselves. So it's actually a revenue stream for us in the future.
And more importantly, it's also ensuring that there's no damage to the brand by ensuring that we're controlling every part of it. So it's vertical integration for the company as well. Sir, did I see you? No, okay. Any other questions, comments?
You had the original, what's his name, the pilot that was controlling the remote control flights coming over.
ICE.
Yes?
ICEman.
And then there was the Australian guy from the RAAF.
Yes.
They're standing at the back.
And the third one, we have Mike Van Vliet, who's come over from the United Kingdom. He's our latest pilot. So Iceman is really now moving across to the unmanned air vehicle environment. And we have both Mike and Mike as the two manned test pilots qualified to go flying.
Yeah. So there's 3 people that can operate the jetpack.
At the moment, yes.
Yeah.
Why, would you like a job, Ruben?
I thought you were going to get your license.
No, Peter's at the back of the queue now. But I would point out both the pilots are standing behind you, so when we break at the end, if you want to have a chat to them, feel most free. Yeah. Yes, sir.
From the point of view of the first responder, how much additional equipment, apart from the pilot himself or herself, can the jetpack carry, and what's the implications of that for flight duration? And can he carry 30 kilograms of equipment like sensors, test and measurement equipment for assessing hazardous environments, that sort of thing?
Okay, so I'll answer in a general way. One of the issues that we're facing as we develop the jetpack is the payload. All right, so depending on the weight of the pilot, depends on what additional payload there would be. But don't forget that if a manned aircraft is flying in, it can take an unmanned vehicle with full payload with him or her, whoever's piloting. It's But it is an issue to reduce the weight, to increase the payload and increase the capacity of the fuel tank so that it can have a longer flight time as well. So those are issues that the guys are grappling with, but I'm sure that Peter would like to expand further, albeit briefly.
Very briefly, obviously we're designing what we call the next generation jetpack, which is the commercial jetpack, and that's being built bottom up. The prototype 12 that you see here was very much a case of adding things on as we wanted to test things. But as an example, what we did for the manned public flying, we decided to do a P12 diet. And what we actually managed to do is actually find a large number of kilograms, in fact 10 plus kilograms that we've taken off the aircraft that we do not need. We can actually then go into further capability of payload. So yes, it's very conscious of this. It is always, when you have an aircraft, one of the things you look at. And the design team, led by my head of engineering, is very much focused on making sure it's as light as possible. I will say, though, that we've got to remember that we have Quantity Science with us now, and you've got to remember they have a capability in metal materials. So one of the things we will be doing in the future is looking at using those future capabilities in the jetpack, which actually will lighten further.
Good answer. Any further questions? Yes, sir.
So in UAV market, as I understand it, we've got drones at the light end, and at the other end we've got Lockheed Martin's K-Max. So where does the jetpack, how well positioned is it against those aircraft with their various capabilities in terms of the drones can, the lighter things that you can use, the K-Max a lift of 2.7 tons, and then any other similar aircraft. So how does the jetpack kind of fit into that environment in a competitive, strategic way?
So it's actually really unique because we are very, very complementary to both those ends. So you've got the light drones that carry anything around about 8 kilograms, up to about 8 kilograms. Then, as you say, you've got the K-Max end. The problem with the K-Max end is if you've got change from $20 million, you're lucky. So it's actually quite expensive. So there's an area right in the middle that right now is a very, very large area. So you're carrying between 10 and 120 kilograms of payload. When you look at the commercial, the mining, transportation, logistics environment, this is a really niche area for us and a great opportunity across the global environment for us to fill.
As an example, and this comes from a master mariner, when large oil tankers load on offshore buoys, before they can set sail for their destination, samples of the oil that they've loaded has to be taken ashore for sampling. What better way to do it on an offshore buoy than having the samples put onto a jetpack and flown ashore? All sorts of things you probably haven't even started to think about that the jetpack can do that no other aircraft currently can do. Any further questions? If not, we have come to the conclusion of business. I just want to read you something. Actually, this was handed to me today. This is a little card that all the staff of this fine company now carry around with them. It's got an interesting little photo of a kid with a strange looking jetpack strapped to its back. But on the other side is who we are. And I'm just going to read it to you because it actually talks about the aspirations of this company. We reach for the stars. We're all in this together. We have fun. We respect each other and we deliver. So that's Martin Aircraft Company, and that's the company you should be very proud of as shareholders. Lastly, I would like to again place on record the board's thanks to Glenn Martin post his resignation from the board. The original inventor of the jetpack, and as Peter has said, were it not for Glenn, we would not be here. He's made a significant contribution to the company and resigned from the board for his own reasons. He continues to be a shareholder of the company and we wish him well in his pursuits. I'd now invite shareholders to join the board and executives for a few drinks and refreshments, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you.